Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
For every veteran, there is a story about a calling to serve, to fight for the freedoms of the American people. And every story has a struggle, a sacrifice, and invisible wounds. Warrior Watts programs help veterans recover from PTSD and invisible wounds through exercise, nutrition, and connecting with other veteran leaders. It is estimated that 22 veterans die each day by suicide, and another 30 veterans die each day by substance abuse. These are preventable deaths. Warrior Watt is committed to fighting PTSD through fitness, nutrition, and community.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFitNation. MisFitNation. The MisFitNation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the MisFitNation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches. We love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the MisFitNation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the MisFitNation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, Stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the MisFitNation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the MisFitNation. It's your Thursday after dinner show. I know you have plenty of things you can do tonight, but you're here with us, and we thank you for hanging out with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this with all your friends because we have a great guest tonight, and we also have good news. There's no reports of any lost first responders in the last 2 days, so we won't have to update that tonight. So thanks. Keep up the hard work and keep on spreading happiness and build your community strong and build that strength within each other. So tonight we have an awesome 24-year military veteran from the United States Air Force, Air National Guard, and Civil Service. She has leadership that reflects all that service, her innovation and reinvention from misalignment and failure to pivot. Her 24 years of service were spent in STEM fields, where she served as a surveillance operator on an AWACS during Desert Storm and counter-drug operations, managing training programs built from the ground up, testing, train-to-trainer, inspections, curriculum development, DSCS, GPS, health clinic, administering cutting-edge drug-free treatments for depression and anxiety. So without further ado, let's welcome U.S. Air Force veteran, career and life coach, founder of Elysian Dream LLC, Georgia Lee Arts. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Rich, for having me on your show tonight.
It's awesome to have you here, and it's always awesome when I'm able to to end the week with a veteran on the show, and one that we actually met via LinkedIn, which is a great place to meet. So thank you for taking some of your time to hang out with us on a Thursday night. So Georgia, I just gave basically a 2-sentence botched up bio of you there. If you don't mind, tell the MisFit Nation a little bit more about you, from as far back as you want to go to how we got here.
So where to begin, right? So I joined the military. So this is really dating myself, but 1991. So I couldn't get picked up with commercial airlines to fly. And I was really bored in what I did. My parents came home with 5 brochures and said, pick something. And so I hated what I did. I went to a 2-year school, and then I didn't get picked up with Delta Airlines. So I began to look to the service, and I got picked up to fly with the military. And so they said, well, your scores qualify for AWACS. So that's how I got into AWACS. And so I'm a Desert Storm. I'm a Gulf War veteran. And then from there, I spent 4 years in that. And then I retrained out into training management. And so I spent several years doing that. And then when that position fell through, when I went into the Guard, that is how I got into space operations. Wow. Okay. And going back on shift work, I realized I was misaligned. And that was number one. A lot of people know they're misaligned, but we think we have more time. I don't think that's true. I think you're just on borrowed time. So there were so many red flags. There weren't, there were enough open doors. There were enough ways I could have pivoted. I didn't, though. I really didn't know how. And sometimes we get stuck for multiple reasons. One of them can be, we think that GS-11 job is all that there is. Right. It's good pay. So we get those golden handcuffs. And, the first indicator really would have been that I should have pivoted would be they pulled all the benefits from my job. So I couldn't finish my degrees in social work and psychology. And that's how I ended up back on shift work. And I ended up an English major. So that's how that all happened. But I went through deep burnout. I ended up back on shift work. And I realized you have to respect your body. 180-hour pay periods, 2 weeks, extra 60 hours. And working mid-shift, so 12.5-hour shift work, mid-shifts. We even stayed on a mid-shift rotation for 3 months, and it was hard. But I began noticing weird symptoms that I could trace back to say 2006 or 7, and I didn't know what they were, but that was the beginning of strange things. By the time I was medically retired, 2015, massive burnout, toxic work center, and chronic fatigue syndrome shows up. I don't know what it is. I am a Gulf War veteran. So I ended up medically retired, and I thought I would pivot out of the service and get served and be back on my feet. And it never happened, Rich. Wow. It never happened. And I realized in retrospect, in all this research I did, because you feel like you're a failure, we're dealing with systems that can't help some of us. Some people get great services, and that's wonderful, but there's people like me who slip through the cracks. So in 2015, trying to get services, I was a priority 1 patient. They didn't understand toxic work environments and how to help me forward. They didn't understand burnout. When I tried to tell them all the strange symptoms I was having with chronic fatigue syndrome, it was like, oh God, noise sensitivity. I couldn't walk in Walmart. I'd have to leave. I couldn't deal with the noise. And the blue lights were too much. Ringing in my ears, muscle problems, weakness, exercise fatigue, I couldn't work out. You'd be fine and then not fine. Your skin would be burning. Sometimes I'd just fall, I'd collapse and pass out. And all these weird things. And you're not making it up, but it's a problem because it's invisible. So instead of believing me, obviously chronic fatigue syndrome was one of the reasons I was med boarded. The VA didn't know what to do with it. So they began yelling at me, raising their voices, threatening, we're going to diagnose you with hypochondriasis and generalized anxiety disorder, which is a pre-existing condition. And I didn't have that. I was a professional woman who just couldn't function anymore. And then they kicked me out. They can actually do that. So I got the good old boot in like 2016. And so I would try to work and then I would fail because I just couldn't maintain employment long enough. I never felt well. And going through vocational rehabilitation didn't really work out. And tons of veterans, most veterans never get through the system. And I've done a lot of research on this, and it's a systemic issue. It's not even personal, but they will tell you that your goal is minimum wage. In 2015, that was $7.25 an hour. Rich, what can you get for that?
A sandwich, maybe.
Right. Right. And then they told me to apply for jobs that criminals getting out of prison would apply for. And I'm like, what? Like you're joking, like you're comparing me to a criminal? And like, yeah, so I knew what I needed. Like I just wanted a few classes so maybe I could tutor English from home and maybe at some point teach. And they said, no, your goal is not more certifications. But one of the problems that veterans have, and this is in all the research, is they don't have the right certifications. And so they end up underemployed, unemployed. And I couldn't get a job accommodation. You're supposed to be able to get one through vocational rehabilitation if they don't believe you that you have chronic fatigue syndrome. So then I was out of the system for a long time, just going to doctors here and there. And, I had so much debt that I nearly landed on the street. I mean, there comes a point you can't pay the rent because you owe so much money. Wow. And you realize you can't keep up. It's unsustainable. But some of the issues I've also ran into were in volunteering with different nonprofits where they have a need to pivot and upgrade their nonprofit and keep clients. So I'm a pretty trusting person, and I've had to learn that I'm almost an over-trusting person. And that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad trait. And trust is really something that should be earned. But in one of the nonprofits, they would order me to hand over, I was trying to develop a business so I could work from home. And so I was volunteering in social media, and it should have led to like some type of work. I was trying to work from home. So I get sandwiched between this board. It's the executive director and a board of directors, and they're at war with each other. And so I was kind of working under her. Then the board of director pulls me in and says, well, we don't have a woman on our board. Well, it created a war, and I got sandwiched in between, and I get fired. I get fired from my volunteer position that would have led to employment. Yes. And then the executive director, she's on the firing line because she failed in her leadership role. She didn't develop a program. So she set herself up to take the program, and the board of directors did it. I'm like, I'm the transitioning veteran. What about me? So, and then I'm like, my woes didn't end there. So then I go to another nonprofit, and I begin noticing all these leadership problems, Rich. And it's different from the military world. And so you can just start a nonprofit and not really have all the leadership skills and know-how and business acumen. So it was not you can start up a political nonprofit, but the way this was started, you can't, I forgot what it was a 501(c), but you can't post political stuff online because you can lose your tax exempt status. Well, they were. And this is during COVID, heightened political tensions. So, I go online because I'm doing some social media work. I get massively canceled online in the veteran community. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not on either side. I'm just saying you can't post this stuff because it's going to harm the nonprofit. So I wasn't well. I was just really sick with chronic fatigue. And I said, this is too much stress. I can't do this anymore. And I worked at a clinic on and off sporadically. It was mostly actually remote from home, very part-time. And then I worked there for maybe 5 or 6 months full time, went into another total energy collapse. And I tried to go back into the VA in 2020. And you should never go back knocking on a door that's been slammed in your face. But I was a little bit desperate. I was deeply in debt and I didn't know what to do. And it was kind of the same thing. You go back through vocational rehabilitation and they denied the chronic fatigue, and I got bullied. The woman starts yawning and mimicking me, and I'm feeling like I'm about ready to die. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Between that and the online takedown, I said, I can't do this. And so I left. I was living in a different city at that time. And I even had a doctor writing letters, just let her be who she needs to be. She knows who she is. She knows what she wants. Can't you just give it to her? And so I couldn't get business services. I couldn't get business development services, nothing.
Wow.
So 2021 comes, I leave where I'm at. I can't afford to live in the city. And I move up to where I'm at now. And it's kind of a good thing I left the world of allopathic medicine. I don't think they could have helped me, but I started seeing functional medicine doctors, and they've worked miracles. I'm not 100% of what I used to be, but I cannot complain. Like I feel amazing a lot of the time. And I said, well, what are you going to do at this point? So I began looking at everything I've done. Like I didn't know how to do a master resume. I didn't know what a targeted resume was. There's in all the services I had gone through, they don't, for whatever reason, give you some of those bare bone basics. But I began learning what all those things were. I began learning about the labor market. Once I began evaluating my own skills, Rich, I realized that I had a gold mine. But I'm not from the business world. So how do I pull all of that into the business world? Well, we begin leading long before we give ourselves credit for. And in a way, we don't call ourselves coaches, some of us, but we begin coaching long before, especially in critical services where you have, like, take an AWACS mission. If you have somebody who's bringing a problem to the job, that could result in something really bad. And when I was in AWACS, I remember the Black Hawk shoot down. It was one of our other air crews that was responsible. But the repercussions were just horrendous. I mean, became an international incident, plastered all over the news. And all of our air crews had to go through retraining and huge scrutiny, political scrutiny. So I learned the value of, definitely attention to detail and not messing stuff up, but also taking care of people. I forgot where I was even going with all of that. But yeah, so evaluating my skills, trying to figure out what do I have to offer? What is my why? And so it begins with, well, I failed to pivot. And while we can blame our toxic work environments, but it's really about how we overcome stuff and what do we do with it going forward? How do we help other people? So it became a question of, so part of what I went through in being medically retired was in trauma, in a toxic work center, people respond differently. So I don't know what you're going to do, Rich. You might beat somebody up, but I learned how to be like a deer, the one that stands in front of your car saying, come on, run me over. So I checked out. So basically that is not a good thing. So if you dissociate, you've checked out of your identity. It isn't the end of the world. So I didn't have services, but I have a bit of a background, and I had to learn how to bring myself back to presence, how to recover my own life with really no services, and say, what can I do moving forward? And so that began research into what is identity. And I discovered, well, there's a whole world of professional identity, and I'm going to tell you what that is and why it's important. And this is where there's a huge gap in our vocational rehabilitation, and we can't fix our systems, right? We can only fix us. So professional identity is not just your title, but it's how you see yourself in relation to your work. It is who you are and why you work why your work matters. It's your values, it's your skills, it's your perception of oneself in a profession. But it's also related to occupational wellness. So that is about personal satisfaction and enrichment from your work. So it involves aligning your career, your personal values, your interests, your skills, and it's about purpose and fulfillment. And so occupational wellness is really critical to all the other dimensions of wellness. There's many dimensions of wellness. So if you're not allowed to have basic occupational wellness, they're going to pull out a job list of minimum wage jobs with, we'll just say, Walmart identities. Like, I'm not picking on Walmart. I like Walmart, but they're pre-made identities, and you just have to pick one. And it doesn't align with who you are. It doesn't help you get out of burnout. And I said, there just has to be something more. And that's when I discovered, well, professional identity is 55% of also the way Americans relate. So, and a lot of people are misaligned in the work that they do. So in some of the research I did, here's some interesting numbers. I call it the zombie apocalypse. Do you like horror movies?
Yes. Everyone
You do? All right. So this is a zombie apocalypse. So 99% of college kids choose the wrong path. They go on to be the 40% of mid-career professionals who regret their choice. They wish they could have chosen a different major, but guess what? They're stuck. They're stuck in debt. They probably have a family and a mortgage, and they don't know how to pivot. And we have 89% as the highest rate of burnout. And for women executives and leaders, it's even higher. You know, they have more burnout than men do. Only 20% of people can tell you that they like the work that they do. 14% of people can say that they're in optimal happiness and thriving. And 50% of people lack purpose and meaning. 47% of mid-career professionals regret their choices and wish they could pivot, and they just don't know how. 44% of veterans struggle with their identity when they pivot from the service. And a number one regret is that people don't live the life of their dream. So if they can't figure out who they are in all of this stuff, they're going to have that number one regret. And how do we get to living a life that is meaningful without regrets? And so a lot of people don't really have the right tools. And when I look back at when I was graduating high school, and our parents do the best they can, a lot of kids don't get personality testing, strengths testing. And so that's a part of the clientele that I work with. I feel we have to invest in our young people so they don't go on to become a mid-career professional who doesn't know how to pivot, who doesn't know how to redefine their professional identity. And also in giving people design tools and creative tools, we get stuck sometimes. So how do we get unstuck? And a lot of people really just don't know how to pivot. And
listen, I'm going to cut in so I can talk a little bit here. I'll let you come back.
Yeah. Don't let me ramble on forever, because I probably will.
You were going good there. I had to get myself in here. I retired in 2015, so the same time you were going through your VA battle there and the voc rehab battle. And the things you said about the voc rehab were the same exact things they said to me. They told me, "Oh, you were a sergeant first class. You don't need more college. You can get this job. You can take a GS4 and do this, or you can go become a 911 operator on post just to get your foot in the door." I said, "I don't want to do that. I want a job that's requisite of what I've done throughout my career and move forward." So he said, "All right, go downtown." And I wound up in a place just like you did, where they send people that are basically coming from a halfway house into there or off the street into there. And I said, "This is what we're doing to our veterans," as now I am a veteran and I'm getting kicked in the chest by these guys. So I had to find my own path, and I wound up volunteering at the Red Cross for a lot of hours before I found my first job after 365 days. So it's not like if someone was listening to you say that she can't be right. It's right. It's what they do to us. And it's like a button that they have to press to do it to you.
Right. And all of those things are what I call dream barriers. If you're not in working in a field that you enjoy, that you're aligned in, that you're not burning out in, and I'd already gone through burnout. You can't beat a dead horse, or it's the pounding of that square peg in a round hole. I've already been there. You can't, you're going to break me further. Like, I'm just asking for alignment, but I couldn't get it. And I printed out some information, and it's about vocational rehabilitation. And why is it so hard? So Rich, in the 90s, I began developing young military professionals in their careers. And I enjoyed watching people grow and watching them just light up and just grow in their profession and enjoy the person they were becoming. And I think I couldn't become a vocational rehabilitation counselor. Like I couldn't be asked to do that, to deny people their benefits or college or what they want to get for alignment. It's a little mind-boggling to me. And we can't fix the systems, right? So how do we can spend our life chasing benefits. So I chose to walk away. I've had a lot of help financially, actually, to get to here. I couldn't pay all the medical debt, and it's still rolling in. But I chose a different path. I said, do I want to spend my life chasing medical records and proving stuff? Lawyers and attorneys? What other path is there? Or, I really didn't actually expect to live come 2021. I was so at the bottom of chronic fatigue syndrome. To have come to this point, to feel good every day, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life chasing attorneys and lawyers and benefits. I want to live. I want to enjoy every day. And I want to help other people too. And that's why I do what I do. It's helping service members. It's talking about some of the issues that we're facing. It's also helping, I realize with everything I learned that it isn't just service members that I can help, but it's college-bound students. It is mid-career professionals. It's people along every area of the career spectrum. So my niche, while I have different profiles that I serve, client profiles, my niche is really helping people find alignment. And for some people, it's giving them tools to just discover, who are you? Who are you and why are you stuck? Let's get you unstuck. And a biggest thing that I do with people, and the hardest thing I work on, how do we redefine success? Right. And part of my failure too was, as a woman, not really knowing how to set boundaries. And that can actually help you as a leader at work and in your marriage. But I didn't know how to say no. And, you can have a value in a marriage of, well, we want to earn so much money and we're after all these things. But at some point, if you're burning out, something has to give. And for me, it did. The husband wants the country club and all these fancy cars, and you're like, I'm done. I'm burned out. So at some point, you have to redefine what success is. The beautiful home I had, 2-story home, fireplaces running the length of the house from the upper to the lower, 10 miles from the ocean, situated in the vineyards. I mean, you can't, it's kind of a beautiful life, but at some point you're like, I don't even care. Like, you go home and you don't even appreciate your house because you're so burned out. So if I had redefined success and just pivoted, so we're afraid to pivot to something that may pay a little less because we think that we've failed. We think that, what are people going to think? Or, we don't want to admit that we failed. So we don't pivot. But I think if we just pivot, and maybe it doesn't have to be a pay cut, but maybe if we just pivot, like when I look at everything I lost, if I would have just pivoted, I wouldn't have lost everything I lost. But there's so many lessons in it. And I said, I can't not help people. I can't not help people. And everybody's, the whole world's in an identity crisis. You have college-bound kids trying to figure out who they are for the first time. They have to have a professional identity when they were probably home playing video games before that. Definitely. And then you get the mid-career people who get stuck and then you get transitioning veterans. So in my book, I write about the veteran identity gap. So you go from being an individual to a collective identity where you don't really always get to be an individual, and you form a very unique bond. You have some definitely unique experiences, shared experiences, camaraderie, trust, but you leave that, and you lose the camaraderie, you lose the structure and the routine, and it's a whole different type of social group. The jokes I would make in the military are not things I could make with some of my civilian friends, especially in a professional setting. And you probably, and it's one of the toughest things I do is working against specifically officers when we work on a resume. It's who are you beyond the rank and the ribbons and the leadership and the authority? Because oftentimes they're applying for these roles that don't define any of that. So, okay, we have to take colonel or whatever off the resume. But how can we still get you that satisfaction in life? How can we make your transition easier? And, one of the things I see people doing is becoming coaches, and that's definitely a bit of a leadership role. So that would be one way some people might get satisfaction. One thing I see with enlisted people, why they re-enlist, they don't have a plan, and they like the money they're getting, but they don't necessarily like what they do. And that's where I come in. So things they're probably not going to get in the military: personality testing, strengths testing, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I do. So once you figure out who you are, and I've always known who I am, but I just got off the beaten course, that a lot of people really just never really figured that out, or by the time they figure it out, they don't know how to make that pivot. So there's always a way, right, for people. And what are some of the things that you felt in your transition that were hard, Rich?
I think the biggest thing for me in my transition was over believing that I would get hired right away. I had so much confidence that that job was going to be there when I got out. I didn't anticipate that all the jobs that I was going to look for were the same jobs that all my superiors were going for before I got out. And they were still sitting in there. All the people that mentored me were still sitting in those positions for years and years and years, and there was no more positions. So by the time I was getting out, all those positions were filled with all the people who got out, like probably midway through GWAT, and I was coming out towards the end, at the end of my career after 14 years in GWAT, and they were just still sitting there, and those jobs weren't there. So I hit that brick wall, and I said, there's going to be other jobs. I kept being positive, but losing confidence, being positive, losing confidence, being positive, losing confidence, until I drove from Tennessee up to Washington, D.C. for an interview at the Homeland Security Emergency Management Office for District of Columbia. And I sat there. As I was sitting there getting asked the questions, I knew they didn't want me. They just wanted to interview me because I was a veteran. So they'd get a check mark that they interviewed a veteran. But I can feel it just by the questions, what they were doing. And I left there a little dejected, but more motivated to move on with my life. And that's when I got a call to apply for something else, and I got that job exactly 365 days after I retired. So,
wow, a whole year.
Yeah, exactly 365.
It's a lengthy wait.
Yes, it is. But I was able to be resilient and fight through it, and thankfully I have a strong, better half in my house, and she kept me pushing forward. Not let me get down on myself, and had me keep getting up every day and doing stuff instead of just sitting on the couch and drinking with the dogs.
Right. And military spouses too, they go through their own transition issues. So, and I never really had that awareness until I started working with a few other coaches that I do. It's called Mission Transition. So I do some work with Semper Forward with it, which is a nonprofit in Wisconsin, and then also with Sparrow Consulting. So we put together seminars for transitioning veterans. And so Janine Smith, Sparrow Consulting. So she's a spouse. So she works on the spouse spectrum, and then I work on the military spectrum. But it's definitely an eye opener that we're all struggling. with different things. And we don't always get our needs met through services that should service. It's just really the way it is. And we have to find another way out. And I kind of call it the glue trap, because when you think about red tape, what's on the back of it?
It's glue. Yeah.
Glue. And you can die in the red tape process. And I said, I can't do this. We don't know how much life we have left. And I want to spend it not chasing red tape. I want to spend it helping people.
Exactly. And you said you work with the Semper Forward Foundation, and there's actually a question in the chat from at Semper Strong. They ask, how can transitioning veterans avoid burnout while navigating career and life changes? Any practical steps that we can take?
So avoiding burnout. Okay. So planning before you pivot, like not just getting orders to get out. Let's plan a significant time ahead of that. And there's a lot of things. You have to take care of your health. Don't always chase the highest paycheck. Pace yourself. Getting a job is stressful. One of the things I kind of failed at, and I really wasn't well enough to try to do everything at the same time with chronic fatigue, but networking is really crucial. And I wasn't taught how to do it. I'm learning that now. And so that would have been one of the most critical things I probably could have started with, was building a network. And in the TAPS class, we're not really given all the tools to do that. Like, I think they geared me in 2015 towards civil service when I was actually looking for jobs in the private sector. They couldn't show me how to do a resume for that. They didn't tell me what's a master resume, a targeted resume. But you have to take care of your health in burnout. And another critical thing I want to point on is a lot of people are looking for, they figure out, this is what I need to make. And so this is a job I need to look for. And while that is important, what I want to bring up is, if you're working and you're misaligned and it's maybe just not your passion, or the job is burning you out, you have to figure out what career isn't going to burn you out.
Right.
And you have to learn how to redefine success. Those are probably the two biggest things. Because once you don't have your health anymore, once you can't work anymore, you can really lose everything.
You definitely do. And if you wake up in the morning, you say, I have to go to work, that's not a job you like. It's not a job that is fulfilling your purpose. It's the jobs that you wake up and say, I get to go to work now, because it's something you want to do. It's something you feel like you're motivated to do. And it's something many military people, when they wake up in the morning, it sucks getting up at 5:30 to do PT in the morning, but they know that they get to do that. You get paid to be fit. You get paid to do that job. Yeah. And you have fun. You act like a kid for the whole time you're in the military. No matter what you're doing, you're still playing a kid's game. That's why I looked at it as I was playing G.I. Joe my whole career for 22 years. And then you get out and you look at your hands of, what am I supposed to do with myself? What am I supposed to do with my hands as I grow forward? And that's where that pivot, learning yourself what that pivot has to be. And like you said, TAPS, especially when we went through, is not anything worthwhile. Now it's a lot better. They have a lot more services now. Soldier for Life does, and all the other services have their names for it. It's a much better program now, where they do internships. They do skills classes where they can get certifications within the last 120 days of service. And that helps out a lot as well.
Right. And I think a big thing too is that service members have to realize that they're going through a transitory period, and it may feel uncomfortable and it may be stressful at times. And so stress management, managing stress is really critical, and maybe getting some physical fitness in if they're able. Those would be critical things. And having the awareness that really everything, when we think about the dimensions of wellness, everything is shifting in your life. It could be a little bit on the emotional side. It could be your mental health and your relationships. It could even be on the spiritual side. It could be on the intellectual side, the physical side, environmental, financial, and definitely occupational. So realize that all those areas, and social, all those things are shifting. So you have to have a plan for it. And I can't tell each person what that would be. Every person has to define it for themselves. And it's like taking a blank worksheet. Okay, I know I'm going to be going through all this. So you have the awareness. Having awareness is crucial. So, okay, what do I want my future to look like? So kind of making a roadmap. What do I want the finances to look like? Where I'm relocating to, what does it cost to live? Can I maybe take that job that pays a little less if I need to? What kind of an occupation do I want to do? Am I going to really enjoy this? And when they're pivoting too, it's not just the service members, but their family members are pivoting with them. So everybody's going through tensions at the same time. So having the awareness that maybe more battles between spouses could occur.
Yes.
Because there's so much uncertainty that's coming up. But it's really important to keep in mind, and I said occupational wellness it's getting that personal satisfaction and enrichment from your work, aligning your career, your personal values, your interests, your skills, feeling fulfilled. But so we've taken it a little bit further. And we say it's defining who you are with the work you do. So basically defining your identity. Who are you? So a lot of people don't have a lot of tools like personality testing or the Enneagram. That's another great test. They don't necessarily know what their strengths are. And so knowing what all those things are, and if you do an MBTI test, it's going to give you a whole bunch of career fields that are compatible with you. And what's really funny, Rich, is specifically with college-bound kids, because they have some other idea, but they know what they're doing doesn't work. So they'll get this list and they'll be like, that just looks boring. That doesn't look interesting. But what I've noticed, and they'll go on, but they have the toolbox. So they're going to pivot back around and land on something that we talked about that was really boring before. And they're going to write me back and say, Georgia, this is what I'm doing and I really enjoy it. So they not only have that toolbox, but they can figure out with all the design tools, how do I pivot when I get to mid-career so I don't have to burn out and be unhappy? Because not all burnout is driven by the design of a work center. Actually, it brings me to something else. Sometimes people burn themselves out. So I've worked with people who so if we might have an MBTI style, and it could be even extroverts burn themselves out, but I have a good example of an introvert. So you have somebody who's more introverted and they could be in, like, say, a sales position. And they could also have a strength in that MBTI where they are, what is the right word? It is not aggressive, but they're like the go-getter. But they have that same in their strength. So I've seen where strengths can actually become a weakness. And we all have our strengths that become weaknesses too. So I'll tell you one of mine. So as somebody who's visionary, I could burn myself out creating, right? And I've realized, like, I could just spin stuff out. And I realized that at some point, Georgia, you have to get stuff done. So I need, if I have a partner, it would be somebody who is, so I'm the visionary, but I need the integrator. If you've read this book, it's called Rocket Fuel. And I've known I've needed like my other half for a long time, but I do get it done if I keep myself aligned. So when I get my ideas, they go in a notebook for a rainy day. I can't just start pumping out 10 new blog articles and whatever hits my brain. So that's how a strength can become a weakness.
And Janine Smith said assertive is the word.
Yeah, thank you. My brain couldn't find out what it was. Thank you for coming, Janine.
And she thanks you for the shout out earlier as well.
Yeah.
We got another question in here from Mission Mindset.
Okay.
What's the first step for a veteran who feels lost in their post-service career path? How do we start aligning our life and career?
Okay. So the first step I would say is contact me. That's what I specialize in. Who are you? Who are you after service? Who are you without the uniform? Let's help you redefine your life forward. And we're going to look at every facet of who you are. And so redefining, because you're going to be a little bit lost. But if you don't have a career path you're already enthused about laid out, it's going to be harder when you come to the private sector. So before you leave the service, if you're not enthused about what you're doing and you don't know what that is in the private sector, come and work with me, because I'm going to help you target something. And part of what I do too is in the world of design, because a lot of people invest time, money, and energy into something. Could be a degree, it could be a relocation from the West Coast to the East Coast. Let's ideate that. Let's come up with multiple potential pathways, and let's go out and test those to see if they're reality. What is the reality of that? So maybe that career path, maybe it's not going to lead to, maybe that job is not on the hot job list. Maybe it's going to be, maybe AI is going to take it over. So let's look at the reality of something before you go out and do it. I'm not sure if that answered the question or if I got off track.
I think you got that one. That was a good answer right there. And another question came in while you were answering that question. So at Valor Vet asks, Georgia, as a fellow veteran, how did your military experience shape your approach to identity coaching and career transitions?
Let me see. I think so in my career, like I've always had to show up with an answer on the red carpet or you're going to get it. Like you just don't show up and not have an answer for your higher command. So knowing how to look for answers, knowing how to find at least three solutions, and going through Siri. So I went through survival school in the early 90s, being an AWACS crew member, 3 weeks of survival school in Washington State, which is rough, really rugged terrain. So I weighed maybe 110 pounds. If I was lucky, I was almost underweight for 5'6" with a 70-pound pack. But you go through survival, evasion, resistance, escape in a prisoner of war camp, a simulated one. And so I said, wow, what did you agree to? Like, what did you get yourself into? It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the best thing I've ever done, because it taught me skills I can't get those anywhere else. You can't learn that. But it really taught me overcoming hardships. So every time in my life I've gone through something hard, I've looked back and said, if you made it through that, come on, you can get through this. And it's maybe an inner compass, and just knowing that you have to do it. And without the right services in my pivot, and ultimately walking away, I said, you can do this. And I know how to find information. I'm pretty good at it. So how do you not only try to get your life and your health back, but how do you help other people forward? And it's just the inner knowing that you have to do it. I don't know if that was really...
I think that helps. Yes.
Okay.
Janine jumped in and said, set up boundaries and make a calendar of what you want to accomplish. Learn to say no and define what you actually want.
Yep. Yeah. And I have to say something. So Semper Forward and also Janine, so Sparrow Consulting, they do more resume. I help them with resumes, but they do the brunt of the work with it. So on Semper Forward, they have different resources. I think one of them is Teal HQ. You can upload a resume and it will give you a match to the civilian job. So you upload the civilian position description in it. And so you can keep tweaking your resume until you get a higher match, because if you can't get past the applicant tracking system, you got to get past that first if you want to get an interview. So that's step number one. And Janine does a lot of that work too.
Awesome. And I think it seems like we need to have Janine come on the show too to talk about all the things she's doing. So
yeah, she's
jump in.
She's super awesome. And, she opened my mind to, sometimes we only think about ourselves and our groups, but it's also the spouses that can suffer in transition, and even kids, especially if they're changing a school. And so you have whole families that are going through a pivotal transitional time.
And for us, we made a decision. Well, I told my daughter something when she was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, that she will change a lot of schools during elementary school, middle school, but high school, I promised her at that point that she'd go to one high school, so she wouldn't lose those friends for high school.
Oh.
And all the things I taught her in her whole life, the one thing she remembered when she was about to be a junior and I got orders to leave was that I told her she'd go to one high school. So I was a GO bachelor for my last 2 years in the Army while she was in high school finishing, and I kept my promise to her.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So that's one thing. I didn't want her to go through that, because especially high school is a very hard time for anybody. And to change schools midway through after you start your friendships, that'd be rough.
Right. Right.
So after a couple of those questions, you said the first thing they should do is contact you, Georgia. What's the best way for people to contact you?
So ElysianDream.net, or so I had a professional email, but in the world of cyber stuff, when Google sold to Squarespace, my professional email got lost. I never did recover it. So it is georgia.elysiandream@gmail.com. They can text my cell phone. I usually don't put a cell phone out on my internet because people think like they don't think I'm local, so I will give a number though. It is 805-315-6057. So send me a text or a message and how I can help you. So my specialty is helping people figure out who they are and then aligning it with the work that they do. And I'm we're not exactly partners, but I have to call it a resource with Sparrow Consulting and with Semper Forward to help with the other aspect, which is the resume, the cover letter, and a job board. So
awesome. I shared your website, your email, plus your Facebook and LinkedIn in the chat. So everyone, they can find you in one of those ways and align with you, definitely. So
super.
That's awesome. And Georgia, what I usually ask my guests before they leave is to tell the Misfit Nation 3 things they can start doing tomorrow to make themselves more successful in life. What would that be?
Know who you are. So go through get personality testing, strengths testing. You can come to me if you want some of it. So figure out who you are and then align that with the work that you do. And reach out to people who can help in that transition. So you're never alone in your transition, right? We're struggling, we're going through hardships. Sometimes we go through different emotions and we feel like there's no one to talk to. Counselors can be great, but sometimes they can't relate to the experience exactly. And that's what we're here for. We're peers who get you, we understand you. We can talk to you, we can guide you toward other resources. So you're not alone. Definitely.
Georgia, thank you for coming on and sharing your insights with us and of course your whole story.
Yeah.
You're the first AWACS person I've met, so that's a check off. So awesome. Thank you. And thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And anytime you want to come back and just chat or jump into our chat or our comments, come back anytime you want. You're more than welcome.
Thank you so much, Rich.
And have a great night.
You too.
Good night, Misfit Nation.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family.